Welcome to the NintenFusion Podcast, a podcast that fuses past, present, and future Nintendo thought. I'm David, accompanied by a different than normal friend, James.
Hello.
Hi, James. It's good to have you on the podcast. James is actually a good friend of mine and Jordan's. We actually used to do another podcast together, the three of us and an additional friend, called The Virtual Boys. We did that for quite a few episodes, so it's really exciting to have James on the show now. And I think you'll appreciate a lot of his opinions, especially on today's topic.
Yeah, this is incredibly nostalgic to be talking with you again on a podcast about video games. It's like, the college boys back together again, kind of a situation.
Yeah, I think we started podcasting in like 2015 or something crazy.
Oh, man, yeah.
And then we did it for several years. I think we got up to like 140 episodes on that other podcast. So we're experienced, to say the least. But James, why don't you give yourself a quick little introduction, where people can find you, some of your favorite things about Nintendo, stuff like that.
Sure. So I mostly content create on YouTube. I do video essays, mostly humorous ones about Nintendo video games, namely Zelda, Xenoblade, Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem actually is probably the biggest one. I'm a huge Fire Emblem fan, but I did not set out to be Fire Emblem focused YouTube channel. It was more just the Nintendo games I enjoy. But for some reason, the content that I do with Fire Emblem tends to get more views. But if you like that kind of stuff and, Pokemon and other Nintendo goodness, then you can find me over in Nintendo City. I also do a podcast with my good friend Petter on Umami Manga, where we talk about, surprise, surprise, manga. Some of the series that we follow, we go volume by volume. We started with Attack on Titan, and we're actually doing chapter by chapter that time. Those were the days. And then from there, we started to Kaguya-sama, and we just covered volume by volume. And now we have like a whole plethora. Now we have a whole plethora of manga that we cover. So take a look at that if you are interested in manga.
Very cool.
That's about it.
Well, I will be sure to put links to both of those in our descriptions for the episode so that our listeners can go give that a check, a visit, a view to feed the algorithm.
Yes, please, the algorithm.
Please, feed the algorithm, the beast, it hungers. So anyway, that's James. And again, I'm David. If you want an introduction about me, go back to episode 1 of the podcast where Jordan and I introduced ourselves. But anyway, this week we are going to be talking about a game that probably means a lot to both of us now. It's just suddenly risen up on our list of games that we just absolutely love. And it's because it comes from a series that we absolutely love. And if you couldn't guess by the title, that game is, of course, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 launched on July 29th this year, so a few weeks ago as of this recording. And I think we both have a very large number of hours in the game. Mine's not enormous. I've been kind of playing other games, hopping around. I think I have like 80 or so hours in the game, which is still a ton.
That's a lot.
An RPG. But you don't have to say how many hours you have if you're not comfortable, of course.
It's really embarrassing because I haven't finished the game. And
yeah, me neither, by the way.
Right, David hasn't either. But David definitely is farther than I am as far as our discussion has gone. I'm definitely close to, if not at 120 hours. And I remember hearing the IGN reviewer mention in a podcast, he was like, yeah, it's a pretty long game, but I just had to do it all. So it took me 120 hours. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, good. That's what, like 240 for me to maybe do all 100%. I'm just so slow. And it's not something like I pride myself in, or like, I'm like, I'm trying to be slow. It for some reason, just when I play any kind of video game, really, I move slower than coal tar in the middle of Alaska, as my father would probably say. So yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking games slowly. Like, I'm not like trying to speed run the games or anything, but I'm also not taking it at a leisurely pace. I tend to speed read through a lot of the dialogue, especially during quests. And like, I only really listen to the whole dialogue portions when they're actually like the full cinematic scenes. So I'm terrible, but I'll sometimes cut off characters mid-sentence because I'm like, I already read everything you said.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just a slow reader. Maybe
not slow reader, but you like embellish, you care about like the words that are being said. And I think that's something that you've just always done. So
yeah,
it's totally fine. People can play the games however they want.
Absolutely.
That's the whole point. You've got your own console in the game, and who cares if it takes you 800 hours to finish the game?
Yeah. Good night.
Well, and I mean, just considering the game, I think this is one that you should also really relish if you are enjoying it. So like, don't feel bad taking it slow. I mean, one of the reasons I drive myself through the game is because I really want to move the plot forward. When I got to chapter 6, so when you finish chapter 5, there is like probably a 3-hour block of cutscenes and story content. And I was like, okay, now I'm even more hooked than I was before. And I kind of pushed through a ways until I'm about halfway through chapter 7. So I'm actually really close towards the end.
Nice.
But I also have taken enormous detours because then I was like, you know what? I kind of want to do side content again, especially the ascension quests for different character classes to upgrade them and all that fun stuff. So, it's not like I'm just blasting through the story. I'm doing quite a few side quests as well. But I also tend to consider like 100%ing the game after I finish the story, even though I do a lot of side content. I don't know. That's just how I tend to play these RPGs. Is I get obsessed for like a good chunk of the time trying to 100% clear every quest I can possibly find. But then I get to a point in the story and I'm just like, okay, it's go mode.
I feel like I'm kind of like that too, where I'm doing a lot of the content, and then by some point, I even felt this way with the first Xenoblade. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to get through the story. Like, I need to know what happens next, and I'm kind of getting a little weary of all the quest. But maybe we should be saving the discussion for a little later. But there's just something different about Xenoblade 3.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. And I did kind of want to mention, I probably should have said this sooner. We are going to be basically dividing this podcast in half. We're going to do a spoiler-free discussion. We're not going to go into any story spoilers until we give a very clear warning that we're going to delve into parts of the story that we've both experienced, to kind of compare it to other games, talk about some of our favorite twists and how much we love the characters, etc. But you'll get that when we have a very clear warning. So if you're still listening and you're just like, oh my gosh, are they going to talk about spoilers? We promise we will make it very clear when we get to that point. So anyway, to kind of push the conversation a little bit farther forward, I kind of wanted to establish maybe how much we love the Xenoblade series in general. Where did you start with the series? Have you played all the games? Why don't you tell us just a little bit about your story with the games, James? Like, why do you love them? Where did you start? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Funny thing is, the reason why I started playing Xenoblade is because I saw David playing it when we were roommates. They were roommates. Back in college, I just came back from classes one day and I saw David playing this JRPG. I was like, oh, what is it? He explained to me what it was. And sometimes I'll watch someone play a game, especially a big epic game like Xenoblade, and feel a little overwhelmed by it all. But for some reason, as I was watching him play, it's like, I need to play this too. So I picked it up and started playing it. I only got about halfway, maybe not even halfway into the game. And so I think we went our separate ways for summer. And I didn't actually finish playing Xenoblade, surprisingly enough, until it came out on the 3DS. So peak experience, new 3DS.
At 240p or whatever it was.
I'd be surprised if it was that. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it's even on the 3DS, though, the new 3DS, I was blown away by the story, blown away by what things happened, the exploration was incredible. And honestly, for a tiny system like that, to have this epic explorable game was amazing. So yeah, quickly solidified itself as my favorite game ever. Well, it was in competition with, Twilight Princess, which for people who have listened to our other podcast, The Virtual Boys, you would know that I definitely have a love for that game.
Huge fanboy here.
Huge, yeah. But definitely Xenoblade was one of the greatest games I'd ever played and got me back into gaming when I saw David play it and I really started playing myself. I found this joy in video game JRPG storytelling that I kind of knew before, but it was then where I was like, I want to try so many others. And I guess it kind of became the measuring point for me.
Yeah. After Xenoblade, you really then got into like Fire Emblem and some of those other Nintendo games. Like it really did rekindle your passion for gaming, which is cool.
Yeah, it's true. And I guess from there, I dabbled a bit in Xenoblade Chronicles X, but I didn't own a Wii U myself. So I didn't
same here.
Right. So I didn't feel that I could fully get into someone else's copy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do have the game now. I've since gone and bought it, and I since got a used Wii U back before. I'm pretty sure like the Wii U prices have gone up. But anyway.
Same here actually for X. I haven't played through most of it, but I do have a copy of it, so I can go back to it.
I'm ready, but I'm also like, well, what if it comes on Switch? So.
But it also has such a small UI font that I feel like I'm going to have to sit like 2 feet away from my TV.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. It's not anything wrong. It's a feature like that. You're supposed to sit that close to. And then Xenoblade 2 and the hype for that was also accompanied with the Switch because that was the year the Switch released. Yep. And we had some great games, but just returning to kind of what Xenoblade Chronicles was, the first one was, and just knowing that, wow, this is going to become a series, isn't it? There was just so much hype behind it. And I really adored the cast in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The music was incredible. I think it's even better than Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one, in music wise. The story is better in the first game. But music wise, yeah, I was blown away. Even the cast, I think just the way they bond is better. Anyway, I love that. And then I went on and played Torna, and that I love that even more. And that is my Xenoblade history. I never played any of Monolith Soft's or Takahashi's, Xenosaga, Xenogear. I never touched those, didn't have the systems, or I don't think I was old enough really to play them. But that's me.
I mean, that's honestly just such a great experience for Xenoblade. Mine is honestly quite similar to yours, though my experience started back in 2011, 2012. When they finally released Xenoblade in the US. I remember following, I believe it was Project Rainfall that tried to get 3 JRPGs localized to the US. Because for whatever reason, Nintendo was like, no, we're not going to bring Xenoblade Chronicles or Pandora's Tower, and I forget what the third one was.
The Last Story.
The Last Story, that's right. And they finally added them, and I just remember being so excited for Xenoblade Chronicles, and I got it day one. I got it with the special art book and loaded it in and was just absolutely blown away and captivated. I did not finish it during that first chunk of time. I actually kind of took a 2-year break from quite a few things, but we don't need to go into those details. But then, after that 2-year break, I picked it back up and I started playing it again, basically when James and I were roommates. And that's when James saw me play it. And that's when I really first finished it, was kind of that first summer after James and I were first roommates. And oh man, incredible game. The first one was just so good. And it was amazing what they were able to pull off on the Wii with that game.
Yeah.
So
really though.
I mean, it was amazing. The music blew me away. I was so hooked. And I also then bought it on the 3DS when it came out, I guess the next year after I beat it. I didn't finish it on the 3DS because I was like, I just finished this on the Wii and the Wii version is superior. Except for the sound test, I guess. The sound test was pretty cool on the 3DS version, which I wish Xenoblade 3 had that, but that's a totally different aside. And I mean, I've always loved these big epic RPG games. I've mentioned before on this podcast that I love JRPGs. I don't have time to play them all, of course, but I was a big fan of the Tales series games back in high school. Played Tales of Symphonia so much, and Tales of the Abyss, and I was a huge fan of like Kingdom Hearts, and I still am of Kingdom Hearts. And so like Xenoblade was just such a natural fit for me. And it just worked out really well. And then, of course, we kind of pushed through the Wii U era, where it was just kind of sad that there was nothing. I didn't have my own Wii U. I wanted to play X, but like, I don't know, the whole gigantic mech thing and the way that the story seemed structured didn't really grasp my attention as much.
Right.
And I was able to watch one of our other roommates play through quite a bit of it. So I'll probably go back to it eventually. I've heard some great things about it, and that it's just a really fun game to play. But, you know, we powered through the Wii U era of Nintendo. That was very sad. And then the Switch came out, and in 2017, they were like, boom, here is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And I was just like, oh my gosh, they made a sequel. I was so excited.
Oh, man.
You know, I got the special edition, made sure I grabbed the Pyra Pro controller because I knew Nintendo wasn't going to make any more of those. And
gotta get that.
You know, I'm still playing 3 with that controller, by the way.
Same.
What were you going to ask?
Do you remember when we watched the January Switch presentation all the way back in 2017? And we had just got done seeing the One Piece movie, and then we ran back to Jordan's apartment to check it out. That's when we saw, I think we missed a little bit or something.
I think we missed like the pre-discussion or something.
Yeah. Anyway, but we ended up seeing Xenoblade 2 revealed, and we were just losing our minds. It's like, oh my gosh. And of course we saw the Zelda trailer as well, and then we were just like passed out because of how glorious that was. But that's another discussion. It was incredible to see Xenoblade 2 again and know that Project Rainfall was a success, not only in the fact that we got Xenoblade over here, but this is going to end up being a staple for the for Nintendo. And yeah, now we're on 3, and honestly, it looks like, you know, there's no stopping it.
Oh, I know. It seems to be an absolute powerhouse. Like, it's risen itself up in Nintendo's franchises. And I mean, the hardest thing about this series for me, though, is I have a hard time picking a favorite now between the 3. Like, I love each one for very different and distinct reasons.
Yeah.
Like, I absolutely love what the first game did to me. I love the characters in 2 so much, and I love how different that world felt. And then 3 has some incredible things that I'm just like, oh my gosh, how can I possibly pick a favorite between these 3? So I won't.
I refuse.
I refuse. Please don't make me. And I gotta say, like, I kind of wanted to just mention like some expectations that we might have had for 3 before we really delve into 3, you know, like, on my end, I didn't really have any crazy expectations. I was just like, this is going to be a Xenoblade RPG, and I trust Monolith to do amazing things with it.
Yeah.
And watching like the trailer when it came out, like, I was like going off. I was so excited. Like, oh man, they made a 3rd one in the time it's taken Nintendo to make 2 Zelda games. Like, let's go.
I mean, Monolith Soft, even before the 3rd game came out, Monolith Soft was my favorite development team at Nintendo. I mean, it's like a second party type of situation, but either way, favorite development team that works in Nintendo, that's Monolith Soft for me. I just think whatever they touch has so much quality, and they've also helped with great Nintendo games like Breath of the Wild, Animal Crossing, Splatoon. Like, they've helped out with so much, and they just have a great understanding of grand worlds that are fun to explore, filled with things to see. Even if it's not things that you can interact with, it's still fun to walk around and fight enemies in it. Like, you know, a lot of JRPGs, not every, but a lot of JRPGs either are strict to one path, like they have great details, but they're kind of stuck on one path, or they are pretty open, but there's not a whole lot of detail, or it's not very creative in its art direction or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my expectation with Xenoblade as a series, is that you get this expansive world to explore, but also the incredible design and an epic story to go along with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly think they delivered, and we'll talk about a lot of the reasons why they delivered on both of our expectations here. I mean, just walking into the game, like, I was really excited, but I wasn't overly hyped necessarily. simply because like I knew that the series was in good hands and I was already like sold on the idea from the beginning. It's kind of weird when it comes to like Zelda. I know I'm going to be like freaking out when it starts with the new game, but that might just be because it's been so long since the last game. Whereas with Xenoblade, it's like I played through Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition in like 2 years ago and like 100%ed it. And then I 100%ed 2 in New Game Plus like just a year before that. So it's like I've had this constant stream of Xenoblade content, including like the DLCs that they've added, you know, Future Connected for Definitive Edition and Torna, the Golden Country. You know, Monolith has just been like pushing stuff out consistently. It's been a couple of years since their last one, but like, you know, I was just like, okay, cool, another Xenoblade property to just like sink my teeth in. And that's just kind of how I felt. And of course I was like, I have to play this day one, but I don't know, I wasn't as like excited, I guess, as I was for 2, but that's just because 2 was just so like unexpected for me when the Switch launched. But, so that was my feeling into it. I assume that you were like super hyped like the moment you saw it.
I was definitely super hyped when I saw it, but actually I kind of started to have the same feelings as you, just that I know this is gonna be great. You know, I'm not too worried about how it's going to do, but I wasn't incredibly hyped. Then we had the Direct, and that's when it really started to clarify, the Xenoblade 3 Direct. That's when it started to really hit me that, oh my gosh, we're going to get this amazing Monolith Soft game in just a couple weeks. Holy crap. And that's when I started to really feel the hype. And I think the couple days before the release, I was getting antsy and wanting to, I really wanted to start a Xenoblade game right now. So I was tempted to pick up 2. I was like, no, I gotta wait for 3.
Don't start 2. You'll just be sucked into that one for too long and you won't want to put that one down. I mean, I guess I will say that maybe the reason I wasn't as hyped was because I had some resentment towards Nintendo because of how awful it was to pre-order the special edition.
Oh man. Yeah.
And then the fact that they were like, oh yeah, we haven't even shipped your copy yet, when it was the day it was released. So I actually went to GameStop and bought another copy. So I have 2 sitting on my desk. I couldn't wait.
Same. I went to Best Buy. I was like, I've already bought this game. I'm buying it again. Give it to me.
It's worth
I
it.
Need it now.
You know what, Monolith, you can take my money twice at this point. Like,
this is
just
part of Nintendo's ploy, their plan.
Exactly. But no, it really did pay off. So let's go ahead and then kind of move into some of our actual thoughts about the game and its experience. I kind of want to just talk about briefly how you perceive the visuals. You know, like the graphics, the character designs, that kind of stuff. What do you think about that there, James?
So I'll start off with character design because I think that's one of the greatest improvements from Xenoblade 2. I actually think they did a really good job in the definitive edition of the first game. They already had the design from the first game to work with, but they really streamlined their new art style in that. But 2 had this thing where they were really experimenting with different kinds of designs and what they wanted this series to be going forward. And I think they were trying to put almost all sorts of appeal to that style in order to get people to buy the game. And so you get these famous art directors, character designers to come in. And I mean, we even had Nomura do some designs, but that they just really clashed with each other.
That was kind of the craziest thing about the blade system, was just how different the unique blades were from one another.
Absolutely. And even some of the main cast, because some of them were designed by Nomura and not I forget the normal designer's name, but not them. And so it was a little odd to see that. But with 3, they stuck with one person, the person who designed Rex, Pyre, and all them. Stuck with them, and everyone else has the same kind of philosophy behind, and yet they're so unique and well designed that it just fits so well. And I want to say they did a fantastic job. They've nailed their style. I imagine this is the style they'll go with the next few games. I would expect.
Yeah.
But yeah, so fantastic character models, design, and the world itself looks better than it ever has. It's amazing that this runs on the Switch at times. At times it shows that, the Switch is kind of chugging along in terms of, maybe the game will crash or...
Have you had it crash? Because it's crashed on me twice.
So not when I'm playing. Like there's been a couple moments I'm like, uh-oh, something happening? Oh, we're fine. But I'll turn it off and then I'll come back the next day and it says the game card discarded, like popped out. Like, what? It's still in there. So it like crashes while it's asleep. So I don't get it. But I've been lucky enough not to have it like crash in the middle of battle or the middle of the game.
It hasn't crashed in the middle of the game for me, and this is a totally different tangent, but it crashed twice for me, and both times were when I tried to use bonus experience to level up my characters.
Really?
Which I only ever did those 2 times because I was like, I'm not doing this again because it wasn't worth it to me at that point. And it was after I finished the experience and I backed out of leveling them up. And then the game tried to load in whatever animation of the 2 characters that it had randomly picked sparring each other, because that's what they do. And they like lift up their swords to start fighting or whatever. And the game was just like, we're done here. It's like, what happened?
Breaking. It's like, oh, come on.
An error has occurred. I was like, oh gosh, I haven't seen one of these since like Pokemon. Anyway, no, it was so funny. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. I had saved right before. Yeah. But it sure did make me not want to use my bonus experience ever again.
Right? No, don't blame you. There's plenty of save options. So even when, I had the moment where something would happen when I had the game off, there'd still be an autosave or a save I made that was really close to, or if not like a couple minutes away from when the game crashed. So was never a big deal.
Yeah, the autosaves are actually really generous. They seem to do it at really great points. Though if you do mess around too much with settings and your characters and then don't travel to like a landmark or something, like it won't autosave then. But I mean, when you hit major story beats or finish quests or hit landmarks, it absolutely saves and whatnot. But circling back to character design, since we went off on that tangent of like the game crashing, I do agree with you entirely that I love the art style. I really like 2's art style because it pulled more into the anime, but then I felt that 1 definitive edition just looked so much better and fit the game's world better. And then 3 really has been like, honestly, the best of both worlds. And I will say, like, one of my favorite things about the main cast itself and their designs, I'm not even talking about like them as characters at this point, because we can talk about that later, is that every single one of them is so different, and they took species from both of the games. Like the Kevis party, which has Noah and Uni and Lance, one of them's a Homs, one of them is a Hyentia, and the other is what are they called? Machinas? Or something like that. Which that was so cool. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they're doing that. Like, it's one of each of the 3 main species of human-like characters. And then the Kevis side, one is definitely a human. Tyon is a human. But then you have Mio, who is a Gormati. And then you have Sena, who is clearly a Blade. And I was just like, they didn't have to do that. And they did. And it's such a diverse and unique cast. And it's so good. And their designs are just spot on. And I love all 6 of them, but for whatever reason, Uni's my favorite.
Oh man, I feel like a lot of people are going to say Uni's their favorite, and I'm right there with you. They announced a Mio figure, kind of similar to how they announced a Pyra figure as soon as after the game Xenoblade 2 was released. But I'm like, okay, wake me up when the Uni figure comes out.
I know, right? See, my whole thing with Mio is I think she looks too similar to Nia, and that's not just because she's a Gormati, but she has so many similarities with Nia from Xenoblade 2. And
it's like, personality aside, it's just the looks. It's almost like she's a clone in a way.
Honestly, like, that's what it looks like.
And that's not spoilers or anything, because as far as I'm aware, that's not the case.
They just look too similar is all we're getting at here. And I am fine with that. I love her character and I love her character design, but it's just Uni is just, she's like a different Hyentia. She does not look like Melia, which is the best. So
There'd be nothing wrong if she looked like Melia.
No. I love Melia. Melia is my favorite of the original cast.
But no, she is very unique, and it's just kind of the way she holds herself as well. It's very tomboyish, one of the boys, kind of a vibe to it.
Very confident in who she is, even from a character design standpoint. Yeah, she's just great. I also really like Senna. I think they did a great job with Senna as well. She's the girl with the gall. Anyway, so character designs, love them. And I love how diverse a lot of the hero characters are in the game as well. Very great designing for all of the hero characters. Right. Very unique, very different. And then, of course, the colonies are all filled with all sorts of different characters as well. It was like they went out of their way to yes, there are a lot of similarities between the characters that are just there that don't talk or anything, but there are enough differences across the board that it actually feels like a real world where people are living. Yeah. And I love that.
They definitely have kind of the NPC face going on. Yeah. but they definitely have the NPC face going on. But as opposed to other JRPG games where you have a lot of characters to interact with, they still feel unique enough that you can differentiate between them. It's not like the same NPCs. Like this is, street market NPC. This is lonely mom NPC. I don't know why I chose that one, but they have, there's some that look similar, but they have unique features, and I guess that comes with the different species as well. And things that just make them easier to pick out, and again make the world more alive in that way. Yeah.
There are 7 or 8 different species of characters if you don't count the Nopons. If you count the Nopons, then there's definitely 8. The one that isn't represented in the main party are actually those from Indol. I don't know if you noticed, but there are a couple of characters that are from Indol, which that is not a common species of human in Xenoblade 2. So I thought it was really cool that they also included those characters as well. But anyway. Yeah. One of the heroes is for sure from Indol, but then you also see a lot of NPCs Teach, that right? aren't. Yeah, Teach. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, that is really cool. So you mentioned the colonies. Do you mind if I ask what your thoughts on the colonies themselves? Or am I jumping the gun here?
No, that's fine. Colonies, I think, are a really interesting way to add depth to this world. I will be honest, I was kind of hoping that a sequel after 2 and I guess 1 or whatever in this world would actually be more city-like, where there were lots of big cities to explore. And I was honestly kind of disappointed. That was my one disappointment, was that there were colonies everywhere. I was like, oh, we're just back to 1 again. Even 2 had large populated cities in it. And they've really grown on me. And I think that they are a great way to tie in the fact that this is a world at war, and that things are not right. And maybe that's why I didn't like it as much during the reveal, is I didn't realize that the colony system was specifically designed for the story. And this isn't a spoiler, but to make it very clear that the world is at war, Right. And I think it works incredibly well, especially when you get into a bunch of the side quests that deal with inter-colony relationships. And I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. The best thing about the colonies, though, is that it has made them bring back the affinity chart in full force. I know they had an affinity chart in Torna, but this one feels much more fleshed out and much more interconnecting across the entire world, especially when compared to Xenoblade 1's. And I was addicted to filling out the chart in Xenoblade 1. So it's so cool to see it. So
yeah.
Well, what do you think about the colonies then? Do you like them?
So real quick, design wise, I think they're really awesome in the sense that it follows the kind of mech inspiration and admiration that Takahashi has. He's always loved Gundam and his feature.
Right. Especially since each colony has its own unique gigantic mech, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that take and where they went from there. And again, you appreciate it even more knowing that the world is at war. It just makes sense in that aspect. However, I'm with you in that I think it's my slight nitpick is I think the cities were better in Xenoblade 2. At least some of them were. The one I'm specifically thinking of is the one in Uriah.
That super gorgeous city where it's inside the Titan.
It's like a castle town in a way.
Yeah.
It's just
that
so
was
gorgeous.
With the huge staircases and the waterfalls.
Sprawling. Yes,
It was amazing.
So I loved the detail that they had in that city. You don't really get that in the colonies, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of what their design philosophy was, so that they could focus on other things, is have all of these, groups of people, but not in a necessarily, diverse and super detailed environments. But again, it works with the world they're in. It wouldn't really make sense if they were huge, developed cities everywhere.
Right. Especially since it's clear that these colonies are supposed to be they can be torn down and put up very quickly at any location.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I think they're great. I was also kind of disappointed that there are only 2 colony themes and that each colony didn't get its own song.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I still hum the Kevis theme all the time.
Sure.
The Kevis one I think is better than the Agnes one, but that's just my opinion.
At
least from a memorability standpoint.
No, I think I agree with you.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, I do love the colonies. I do think they are a bit repetitive, but again, it's because they're an army platoon. What are they supposed to do? Change it up completely? No, they are very clearly a military unit. There's always going to be a commander. There's always going to be a second in command, and there's going to be the lackeys that are doing all the foot soldier jobs. That's how they were designed.
Exactly.
Do I think it gets repetitive? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as far as JRPG goes, there is going to be some repetition in how you go about doing things. Although I think where it really avoids being mundane, in my opinion, is how it introduces the colonies and the stories that basically each one has to tell.
Yes.
And the side quests really help with that, in where you explore the colony and the people that are there through their various quests that they give out, and it brings up different parts of the world that are not necessarily brought up in other ones. So in that way, the colonies really differentiate themselves, although they do kind of have the same exact structure.
Right. And I will point out that one of the best things about this game, and Torna did quite a bit of this as well, it's an evolution upon Torna's systems, which I'm just going to make it clear now. Most of the things in this game are evolutions from Torna, Xenoblade 2, and Xenoblade 1. But one of the best things that they've done compared to Xenoblade 2, because I know not a lot of people have played the DLC stories, but have maybe at least played through the story of 2 or 1, is that most of the quests in this game are actually gained by you overhearing conversations at the colonies and then going to sit down at either a campfire or in the barracks or at the mess hall-y areas of the colonies. And you just sit down and the characters in your party talk to each other and decide they want to do something about the problems that they're hearing about. And I think that's such a great way to expand how the problems in the colonies relate to the characters and how they want to help. And it helps with that development all around, development of the main cast and development of the world that they exist in. So I really appreciated that. Can it get kind of annoying when I suddenly have realized that, oops, I haven't talked about any of the things I've heard about in a while? Yes, but it's a great way to give side quests, because in many JRPGs, it's just you walk over to a guy that has a question mark over his head and he just says, please go get me these 5 things. And you're like, okie doke. And there are a couple of quests that start that way in this game, but most of them start from overhearing conversations, which is just, I think it's a great way to handle that story. Yeah,
I agree. At first, I thought it was kind of a roundabout way of doing it. We're adding one extra step to all this. Why can't I just start doing it now? But as you get further along in the game, some of these some of these side quests are a little more deep in what they're dealing with, and you understand why these needs to be talked about. And so going to the camp and having a discussion with these characters and hearing their opinions, I think is a nice plus, and it helps you understand the characters more and grow with them as well.
Yeah. And one of the best things are like the different types of side quests that you can get. So you have the standard ones where they're very JRPG in a lot of ways, where it's just like, oh, here's like a little story problem. And by and large, it doesn't affect the plot much at all. But then you also have the hero quests, and then like the second stage of the hero quest, which I believe the fandom has called Ascension quests.
Okay.
So that's what I mean when I say Ascension quest, is it's like part 2 or the quest that then unlocks the class cap for those characters. But the hero quests and the Ascension quests are amazing because they are completely voice acted and have cutscenes. And it makes it feel like it's just an actual extension of the story. Well, yes, most of them are optional content. Some of the hero quests are required, but most of them are optional. And it makes the world just feel even more lived in, especially because most of the hero quests are about the commanders or various other people around the world that are not in your main party. And so you get to see their side of the world. You get to interact with their friends and help deal with their problems. Sometimes those quests tie back into the main story in some way. And it's incredible. I've really appreciated those quests, and they're the ones that I kind of seek out over the rest of them when I can.
I've always thought that Xenoblade has had pretty good side quests. Yeah, not always the best, and they could be repetitive. So it did kind of suffer from classic JRPG monotony in that way. But with Xenoblade 3, I think they've really kind of turned it around, or really taken the initiative to make these side quests matter. Now, not every side quest is going to be gorgeous, make you cry kind of a situation, but I think for the most part, they've made sure that if you're going on an adventure, there is some sort of story behind it that is more than, I need these things because I'm hungry. Go get that.
Yeah.
I think there is a side quest like that, but there's actually some plots in that. I don't know. I could be misremembering.
Yeah. I mean,
either way,
some of those are usually like, oh, our colony actually needs supplies now. It's not just me being hungry or something, but yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I just think they've stepped up their game in terms of side quests. And the hero quests themselves are just at another level. Like some of them I've watched, I'm just like, this is some of the greatest storytelling. Well, some of the best storytelling that I've heard. It's really phenomenal, some of those quests.
Yeah. And I'm just so excited because, they announced that there's additional paid DLC that's coming out fairly soon. And some of those waves of DLC will have new character quests and stories for those heroes.
That's so good. More content.
I know. And it's going to be content that ties into like the main game. Whereas like the whole DLC story that we got with Xenoblade 2 ended up being its own game, which I wouldn't mind if they gave us some game that's like a prequel to these or something.
Right.
Oh
man, I have theories still that have not been debunked. I have theories that have not been debunked yet in terms of what that prequel would be. Well, we can save that for later discussion.
Okay. Sounds good. We kind of talked a little bit about like voice acting and dialogue and stuff and how there's really great storytelling. And I just wanted to just say briefly that I think that the voice acting is probably the best it's ever been in this game. And I think that some of the dialogue is just absolutely incredible. Whoever is doing like the voice directing, even in English, like this game is solid. I don't really have any problems other than sometimes it's annoying when the characters use very, very, very like United Kingdom phrases and slang. And I'm just like, what does that mean? At one point Yudi said bish bash bosh. And I was like, wait, what's that? Oh, it's bing bang boom. I mean, I don't so really have a problem. It's just like, okay.
I mean, it does give, oddly enough, a foreign feel to it for us Americans. At least that's how I feel. Right. When you're reading or listening to it, it's like, I know they're speaking English, but it's like it's another language sometimes. So there is that kind of otherworldly or, another world type of aspect to it. But I agree with you that I feel that this cast and the voice directing in particular is much better than it was in 2. I know a lot of people say that they give too much flack to some of those characters. Some of those guys were not either well directed or they just. I'm sorry.
What are you talking about, James? Great. Rex shouting Pyra like 80 different ways was perfect.
Stop, please.
Look, I love Rex as a character, but there were so many lines that he said where I was just like, please don't say it like that ever again.
Yeah. But in 3, I think, they really upped their game. They got a better voice director, or maybe it's the same one. I don't know, but either way, it's just done a lot better for the English cast, and the Japanese cast, of course, is amazing. They got some great voice actors to go in there, and altogether, it's a really great piece of acting, in my opinion.
I might change my New Game Plus playthrough to be the Japanese voice acting, just so I can hear it.
I feel like Noah in Japanese is a little more emotional. Just a little bit.
I think I could totally see that. Noah, as much as I love him, is probably the weakest in my eyes of the main cast, which is a shame, at least from a voice, fair. Like at least some of the things that he says and the way he says them. I don't know, but it's not all the time. It's sometimes. I mean, let me say his performance at the end of chapter 5 was incredible though. Like look forward to that.
It was really good.
It was actually insane. I was shocked, but we won't go into spoilers there. So anyway, I just think that the series has really come a long way when it comes to the voice acting. So good to hear that. We briefly mentioned a little bit about the music in the game. I said that I preferred the Kevis colony music better. I do want to kind of point out like one of my I don't know. It was kind of one of my concerns after playing the game for a few hours is I did not feel, at least at first, that the music was as memorable as it was in 2, and even some areas in 1, because I distinctly remember playing through 2 and getting to like Torgoth and even like the Gormati Fields and just hearing those epic soundtracks and just being like, this song is amazing and I want to listen to it on repeat forever. And like, so many places in Xenoblade 2 just have phenomenal soundtracks that I can just remember and probably start humming if I think about it for just a second. Like it has some of my favorite music in video games, period. 2 does. More Ardain is such an amazing song. I love the Aerith Sea music, good. Or not the Aerith Sea. That's from 1.
It's so good.
Leftherian Archipelago. For whatever reason,
that's a good one.
It's amazing, and I loved it. And I was so nervous that I was playing through the game, and the only songs that really like stuck out to me at the beginning were like the super emotional Offseer songs and stuff during the main game. And I was like, I cannot tell you how this first area's song goes. And it was kind of a disappointment, to be completely honest. However, playing through the game more, and especially like getting more familiar with some of the more repetitive tunes, going back to previous areas, I'm starting to like remember more and more of it and realize that I do love it very much. I've always thought that it was incredibly well composed and that it's super epic. I saw a tweet shortly after the game came out that I totally agree with. That's like, it seems like the composers for Xenoblade 3 were told, hey, you're never going to be able to compose another song in your life or something like that. And they delivered. Like, it's amazing. It's incredibly emotional. The chord progression's phenomenal and the instrumentation is beautiful. But I still just was not getting those banger melodies that I can just still remember from 2 to this day. But it has grown on me immensely. Like the colony themes are very memorable now. Some of the regions, especially after like the second or third area, I'm like, yeah, I love this. And of course, the chain attack theme is, for whatever reason, incredible. And so is the menu theme. So lots of incredible music to look forward to if you haven't played yet. So
yeah, it's so good. So I feel similarly in a lot of ways to what you're saying. Xenoblade 2 is one of my favorite OSTs ever. My favorite song, even from that, and I think from all of Xenoblade, is Uriah. It's just so gorgeous.
Holy
but that
cow.
one is so beautiful. I cry every time I hear it. It's just so beautiful. But that's where I feel like Xenoblade 3 really compares to it is that it takes that flute music and kind of this orchestrated type OST and just runs with it. And that's basically kind of the theme throughout Xenoblade 3. So it's less of the hard rock, get your blood pumping. I mean, there are those songs for sure, but it does feel like it's more of a melancholy, beautiful world, atmospheric type of soundtrack.
Yes.
So maybe they're not going to be as, well, as the kids are saying, bops. So they're not as fire. But I still really love them. And I think whenever the OST is released, I'm definitely going to buy it. And that's probably when I'll really start picking up on some of the songs. But there are a couple tracks that I feel are reminiscent of those really blood pumping. I mean, you mentioned the Chain Attack theme. That's great. There are some of the battle songs that are pretty good.
Some of the boss battle themes are also really great.
Well, that one, they have like that orchestra, the chorus.
Yeah.
Going,
No, it's good stuff. Like, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. If you think I'm being pessimistic about the soundtrack, that's not true.
I don't.
I mean, for our listeners.
Yeah. Two that I'll mention that I feel could end up being like underrated gems. Ruby Flats, I think, is a really good, has a really good sound. I can't like hum it off the top of my head right now, but I do distinctly remember that being enjoyable. And then there's one even before that, Something Meadows. It felt like this Meadows one was the equivalent of Gormati and Gower Plains from the very first game.
Okay.
So because you kind of walk into it after being in a tight tunnel, and it just opens up. Like similar themes or feelings to both of those themes. Anyway, so those are two that right now I'm thinking, I think those are going to be some pretty good songs to go back to. But anyway, I agree with you wholeheartedly that the flutes sections are really beautiful, really powerful. And I feel like more so than in the previous two ones. I can't say that. I was about to say that more so than the previous two ones, I'm more emotional about some of the tracks. That's not true. Both 1 and 2 have tracks that just really stick it in your heart and make you cry.
Yeah.
But I think 3 is doing a great job at that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think it fits the bill for the game completely, for sure. And I gotta say, like, some of the best musical moments for me are they actually time a lot of cutscenes around impactful moments in the sound.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
There are parts where I was just like, oh, wow, you really just did X thing right when the flutes came in. Or, and there's honestly, like, the prettiest thing that they have done is taken the Offseer melodies, and of course they're clearly supposed to be like a duet because Noah and Mio play them together all the time. But when that duet comes in and the orchestra is supporting them in the background in story cutscenes, I lose it. I start bawling. It's incredible.
It's so good.
Oh, it's so incredible. Oh man.
Love it.
So anyway, I'm sure that I'm kind of in the same boat. When the soundtrack comes out and I start like listening to it all the time while I'm working on things or studying or something, I'm sure they'll become much more memorable as I listen to them more and more, because that's typically how it goes. So, but the music is top tier. It's a Xenoblade game, and they continue to give us incredible sounds and music. So
they don't miss. It may not be as good potentially as the other OSTs. I mean, we'll see, but it's still fantastic.
I'm gonna need like 6 months before I can say if they're
right,
if it's
exactly.
like as good as or better. But as it stands in my mind, 2 has the best soundtrack in the series still, I think.
Amen. It also has Torna with it, so it's like,
oh yeah,
it just keeps adding on to how many good tracks there are.
For sure. Oh, anyway, we love the music, and it's honestly one of the highlights of the whole series. Not only is the story just good, but the music just fits it so well. Absolutely. You cannot tell me that if you've played 1, that you did not like feel an incredible wave of emotion come over you during the
yeah. Those people have no emotion. They have no souls. So
I hope that
as far as I'm concerned,
I hope that I didn't sound awful to our listeners, but that part of the song gets me every time.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving away from some of the music and stuff, we've talked about a lot of our general experiences. The world is incredible. The games just are really great. I did want to talk briefly about combat without getting into any of the spoilers that, add on to the
too
combat.
Specific. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing specific, but more like general feel of the combat. I think that this is probably the strongest the combat's been, though part of me still prefers a lot of 2's combat systems just because I got really good at 2's combat.
Yeah.
But I love the depth of 3's combat. And I guess I should back up a little bit. 3, I think, introduces you to concepts of how the combat system works much better than the other 2 games ever did.
Absolutely.
The way that the game walks you through them, the way that it locks a ton of the combat behind particular story beats, makes it perfect for newcomers to the series or even veterans that really didn't care about learning the minutia of the combat system to really understand how it's supposed to work through a very clear and natural and well explained progression. One of the biggest gripes that I have with Xenoblade 2 is that all of the tutorials were very bad. And they honestly, in many cases, explain concepts incorrectly. I don't know if you watch much Chugga Conroy or
I haven't lately, no.
Any other YouTube content creators out there for Xenoblade, but if you tried playing 2 and didn't understand the combat, don't feel bad because a lot of people felt the same way. Chugga Conroy actually made a 40-minute video or something where he just explains how the combat works and tries to go over misconceptions. So if you're turned off from the series because you're afraid of the combat, don't be, because 3 does an incredible job at easing you in. Yeah. And I love the combat. It's so responsive and good. What do you think?
I'm going to say it. I think that 3 has the best combat in all of the Xenoblade games, in my opinion. I think what 1 did was phenomenal. What 2 did was phenomenal. But what 3 does is masterpiece. It's the perfect combination of both of them, plus the added other mechanics that they bring into it. It is just incredible, what they've learned over the years. Yeah. And I think it does come down to fluidness of battle and also the tutorials, like you mentioned, how it eases the player into the game. Both of us being, I guess, veterans to the series, we understood right away really how the combat was supposed to go. We're actually kind of expecting things to pick up a little faster. At least I was. Yeah. It's okay, why can't I do this right now? Hello.
I know. I was so mad when I couldn't cancel arts.
Yeah. It's come on, this is a basic thing. Let's go. But to me, back in 2017, playing Xenoblade 2, canceling art took me a while to get. It wasn't until 20 hours into the game where I was oh, I get it. You're actually doing something when you press the button at a certain time.
Oh, I totally agree with that. It did take a while. Yeah. But probably because 2 just didn't explain it properly.
that as well. But, and so that's why I think 3 is phenomenal. And while it for a veteran, it may take a little bit of time to get to the point where you're okay, now I'm able to do everything. I think it's still a good progression, a progression that doesn't leave new fans in the dust. So I really appreciate it for that. And like you said, they do an excellent job of making sure that these new combat ideas are relevant in the story. Not a lot of JRPGs do that. Some of them will have oh, this is the new bells and whistle here, and maybe there's some story to go along with it, but then they'll never forget it, and it makes no sense in the actual real world.
Why can Sora dual wield his keyblades in combat, but then he never goes into those forms in the main, in Kingdom Hearts 2? Come on, guys. Anyway, sorry.
Not the case. Well, that's not the case in Xenoblade.
Yeah.
Everything they can do basically in those cutscenes is more or less reflected in the combat and vice versa. So I love that.
And Xenoblade's kind of always been that way, which is really cool. But I think 3 does it even better.
Yes, that's what I was going with. Like all the way from the first game, they've had that kind of story related gameplay, Shulk's Monado. And
I can see the future.
Right. And then Rex's the blade system and all sorts of stuff there. But they just went above and beyond in Xenoblade 3's combat and making it story relevant. And it's not like bland story stuff either. It some of the reveals into the gameplay were really exciting in my opinion. So yeah. I'm so impressed with what Monolith Soft has done.
And I think it's amazing how the combat in 3 is just literally a fusion between 1 and 2 in so many ways.
It literally is. When they revealed the game, you could tell that they were taking inspiration from both. It's like, okay, yeah, it's going to be mixed. I didn't expect it this far, where they're actually taking how the first game worked in Xenoblade and how Xenoblade 2 worked and putting together, like they have the same combat in 1, and yet it works so well.
Yes, they prioritize the auto attacking from 2, but I think that's True. Better than just like watching Shulk like do crisscrosses with his legs and just randomly swinging his sword.
It was awkward. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But yes, I didn't talk about classes real quick.
Yeah.
I'll just say that going into the game, I was a little overwhelmed thinking about, oh my gosh, how am I going to choose classes? I don't know what I'm going to do. But I think the game does a good job of, giving options to the player. There is an auto build feature where you press a button and it will build all your gems, your stats, everything you need to worry about for the thing. And I do it all the time. And the game actually does it automatically when you switch classes.
Yes.
So
when you switch classes really nice. For the first time.
Right. True. When you switch classes, you're right. When you switch classes the first time, when you switch classes like back and forth and you haven't done it in a while, you have to remember to do the auto build again.
Right.
Otherwise you'll be, you're like, why am I getting my butt kicked? Oh, I only have 1 gem and I only have 1 art. Whoops.
Oh crap. All of my accessories were not equipped.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah. And the auto build is actually pretty intelligent. Of course, there are ways to build around the classes to make them more optimal. But when you're first learning them, or you really don't care about a particular class and you're just grinding up, class points to rank it up, it's perfectly fine and it's great.
Absolutely. Of course, going in there into the weeds yourself is going to be better, but it's not like, the game just gives you random stuff that doesn't matter to your class. The AI is very smart in what you have and what it thinks you'll need. Right. And I appreciate it for that.
It's also hard to say if it has as much like customization as 2 had. Like 2's customization was almost like bonkers, because not only did you have to pick 3 different blades for each character, but then you also had to choose different equipment for the driver and for all of the blades, and you had to choose which arts you wanted to run. Whereas in this game, it's like you have 6 characters and you can change each of their individual classes, but there's not like as many individual options. And gems can actually be equipped to more than 1 character at a time, which was a huge improvement over 1. Like, and the fact that I only have to ever craft like 1 gem is the greatest thing they've done to the gem system.
Oh my gosh. I love the gem system so much more than I did in 1.
I loved crafting crazy gems in 1. Don't get me wrong. But
some people really love that.
This version is like so much more streamlined, and I don't have to remember how to optimally build gem combinations.
Yeah. And that's the thing. The combat in general is just streamlined much more. Like you were saying, there were so many bells and whistles in what 2 was doing, but 3 basically takes all of that and streamlines it in a way that is, I think, easier to swallow.
Yeah, you still have like basically 3 main arts that you can set, and then like they call them now talent arts instead of your like blade combo arts or whatever they're called. And they're great. Just the way that they work is just so good. And the fact that you build up your charge for your like more powerful or more rare move is based on class mechanics. So like if you're an attacker, you have to hit them from the right angle. Or if you're a healer, you have to put down fields and actually give buffs to your party. Or if you're a defender, you have to draw aggro. And the fact that it's like, you can only use these powerful moves if you're using the class correctly makes it so much more interesting than just, I can just stand here and auto attack after my blade has connected to me and then I can use my moves. And that there's just so much more depth and whatnot. I will like kind of point out before, like, this isn't really spoilery, but the Kevis arts need a buff. They are the worst.
That's what I've heard
set in the game.
Yeah,
I've really gotten into like optimization for a lot of the builds and stuff. I highly recommend to both you and to our listeners, if you're interested in like mastering the combat, go check out Enel on YouTube. Enel. He has an amazing set of videos, and he's currently going through the process of going through each of the classes that are available, breaking down their actual strengths and weaknesses and how you can properly build them. So it's a really great way if you want to eventually tackle the super bosses. And super bosses are those ridiculously strong monsters that you come across in the overworld that are above level 100. So if you want to, because the level cap in the game is 99. So if you want to beat those, you're going to want to check out some of that stuff. But like the Kevis arts are just so much weaker than the Agnes arts. And it's simply because the Kevis arts are based on time recharge instead of the mechanics of auto attacking recharge. Because one's combat system was based on that time recharge, which was fine. It worked incredibly well for that game when it was standalone. And two's was much more on auto attacks will recharge your art gauge or art. The Kevis arts are just not as good because they take so much longer, even with quick recharge, because there's nothing else to speed them up other than slowly reducing the amount of time it takes. There are some really powerful ones, of course, but in all, the Agnes classes are just better simply because the Kevis arts are worse. So that's my one complaint with like the optimization side of me when it comes to the combat is they need to buff the Kevis arts. Otherwise, there's no real reason to use them as the main classes. So totally different aside there. But I do absolutely love the combat. It's so fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will say that one of my favorite classes is actually a Kevis class, but that's fine. And it's not so much that because I'm a powerhouse or anything. I just really like how the class works.
Yeah.
You know, it's a defender class. And I don't know. I just, for the, you know, the Kevis typical slow charging, I feel like it charges up really fast. Am I allowed to say which class, or should I?
It's one of the heroes, right?
It's one of the heroes, of course. Yes, it's not one of the main. It's not Lance's class. I don't like Lance's class.
His class is boring.
Yeah, it really is. But there's one that I really like, and even though they're kind of one of the tank builds, they really go through their arts quickly.
You know, just I don't think it's a spoiler if you don't say who the hero is, because you can still hover over all of them in the menu to see what the class name is, if you remember that.
I don't know if I remember the class
even
name.
when you haven't unlocked them, they still show up in your gigantic class menu to remind you there are still classes you're missing. Like, thanks.
Thanks, appreciate it. Okay, well, let me type in the person's name.
It's not Guardian Commander, right?
No. I mean, I like Guardian Commander, but it's not one of my favorites, and it does get kind of weaker after.
Oh, is it Lone Exile, the like double sword? Like,
yes.
That splits in half. Okay.
Wait, does it split in half? Wait.
Or no. It's more like Darth Vader's lightsaber, or not Darth Vader, Darth Maul.
Darth Maul. Yes.
Yeah,
That's it.
Lone Exile.
And they swing it around, and they can launch enemies with it. I really like it, and for me, the arts have always gone quickly, even though it's a Kevis. So for whatever reason, I felt like it was quicker. I don't know if that's because you gain aggro. Yeah, that's me. But overall, I do agree with you that the Agnes classes are usually more fun.
Yeah, like just so our listeners are aware, like there are actually no bad classes in the game, even from like the high optimization community. Like nothing is absolutely awful. You can find success with literally any class. So don't feel like, you know, we're trying to downplay the Kevis classes. It's just those arts could use a buff so that they're as useful as their Agnes counterparts is all. I
totally agree with that. Because like we were saying with like Lance's class, his arts take forever to load up.
Yeah.
Because it's just a timer. It's like, come on, man. You're supposed to get the aggro.
Right.
And then Mio's over there just like evading everything and also hitting the enemy. And
the evasion defender classes are my favorites.
They're pretty great.
But yeah, just so that you're aware, the ogre class, so Senna's base class, is one of the strongest in the game. It's the strongest attacker because it pierces defense. It's insane how much damage it can do.
I even remember when I first started playing as Senna, I was like, dang, Senna does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, crap, she's really strong. But it's because she's piercing through the defense. Yeah.
But the S rank class, the absolute best class in the game, and you should always run it on your team if you're going against unique monsters that are pretty hard, is the Signifier class.
Oh, good to
because it can give a random buff that can then be shared. And you can set up like master arts in such a way that you're like always giving power charge to your team every time you use it. Plus, if you use a fusion art, you can always give attack up too. So you're always giving 3 boosts every single time it goes through. It's broken.
That class is pretty fun.
It's so fun to play.
For a flag pole.
Yeah.
Which, funny enough, I've actually joked in another video I've made about Fire Emblem when I was doing a deep dive or whatever. I thought, or I was kind of like thinking, like, what is this flag here supposed to be? Are they fighting with flagpoles? That's ridiculous. And then this Xenoblade comes out and then literally this person is fighting with a flagpole kind of situation. Yeah. It's more of a trident. But anyway, I thought that was funny. But yes, I love that class.
It's so good. It's so powerful. Like, you should always run it when you're going up against unique monsters. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring up just a couple of highlights for combat. I seriously do recommend going to check out Enel on YouTube if you're more interested in like the intricacies of combat. He's got an enormous number of videos, and he does a good job of pointing out when he'll talk about story spoilers. So
nice. Now, just quickly to clarify, this is not necessarily necessary for the main game, or you can get by it really without too much tutorial unless you need it. You need the extra help. That's totally fine. But there are these super bosses, as we mentioned. So yeah, going to a YouTuber like Enel, as David said, can really help you get the correct build and whatnot.
Right.
Xenoblade 2 was the same way. The Xenoblade 2 had a lot of other things that you had to deal with, like the rare blade stuff. Oh my gosh. I needed a lot of help with that. Xenoblade 3, I'm feeling pretty good, but I might with the super bosses go to YouTubers and be like, okay, what was the build you used?
Yeah, exactly. It can also be really fun to watch these types of videos to learn more about the combat system if you wanted to play through hard mode, which apparently hard mode is actually really rough. Like, they did a great job making it actually hard. And then if you wanted to also take on unique monsters that are higher level than you. So if you wanted to like really challenge yourself in the game, like that's kind of the way to go, is to learn how the system works better from other people that have spent tons of hours optimizing. So, but anyway, I think the combat's incredible in the game, and I've always really liked the Xenoblade combat. I've taken out all of the super bosses in the previous games because I just enjoy the combat so much. So 3 does an amazing job with the combat. Now, to kind of like wrap up our spoiler-free discussion here, since we've actually been talking for a very long time about Xenoblade, I did kind of want to ask you, like, how would you rate the game? And I kind of would like to get 2 different review scores from you. And you can, of course, say, like, this score is subject to change as I finish the game. But the first score is
subject to game.
Okay. The first score is, how would you rate the game as an RPG lover? So like, if you're talking to somebody that loves RPGs, what would you rate it and love it? Second of all, how would you rate the game to people that don't play RPGs? So that you have 2 different review scores.
Yeah, that's a great point to make, because if you're not an RPG lover and also a JRPG lover, then I think sometimes these games are not going to rank as high for you. That being said, for JRPG lovers, I'm sitting between, I think it'd definitely be a 9. I'm going to give you 3 scores. So for JRPG lovers, it's going to be a 9 right now because I haven't finished the game. I think if the game delivers on certain plot points, because that's an important part of a JRPG, then it'll be a 10 out of 10 for them. For those who do not usually play or may not even like JRPGs, I think it's a game that you can really get into because it has the exploration, the great music, and a really good story. I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10 in that aspect. Well, probably between a 7 and 8, just because there is more to the game than just, battle to battle, plot point to plot point. There is this exploration side that I think those who like Breath of the Wild might really be addicted to, in my opinion. And then my third score is my personal score right now. I'm sitting between an 8 and a 9 but with a lot of potential to go up. Because where I'm at the story, it has kind of blown me away, but it needs to give like the final go, like the final pop to, make it a 10 out of 10 or get up to, or solidify itself as a 9 out of 10. That's where I'm at right now. But right now it has basically all the, I guess it checks off all of the requirements for what a great masterpiece needs so far.
Okay. I really like those numbers, to be honest. I am a little bit farther in the story than you. So I've got to say, it's delivering on a lot of those points, but I'm not done. So yeah, when it comes to JRPG lovers, I would say if you absolutely love these types of games, then you absolutely need to play it. And I'd probably give it a 9 or a 9.5. Just because it's got such a deep system for combat. The side quests are really well done. The music's amazing. The world is wonderful. Even though I have a few gripes with some of the visuals, there are definitely clear parts where you can see repeating textures on the ground. But that's if you don't look for that stuff, you probably won't notice it. But if you love these kinds of games, then absolutely you're going to love this one. It's an incredible JRPG experience if that's your style of game. When it comes to the average Nintendo fan, if you are interested in the game, I definitely give it a strong recommend. You will fall in love with the story, and it might make you want to go play 1 and 2, especially for some of the tie-ins that I won't mention here to the previous 2 games. If I had to rate it for them, I'd say a 7 is really fair. It is not a perfect video game by any stretch, and it definitely relies on a lot of the mechanics and tropes that JRPGs rely on and fall into. So if you're really not a JRPG fan, you probably won't like it, and that's totally fine. But the game is really solid. It's well made. It is way better than average, and so for the average general run-of-the-mill player, 7, 7.5.
Yeah.
As for my own personal score, based on where the story is at and how much absolute joy and emotion I have felt so far, this has been absolutely worth every single minute that I have spent on the game. It's worth every penny of buying it twice so far. And I mean, I'm really hoping that the finale of the story just really delivers. And if it does deliver, then I could probably give it a personal score of a 10 out of 10, because it's it's such an experience for me. I love it so much. As it stands right now, waiting in anticipation of, how are things going to wrap up? Where's it going to go from here? Kind of sitting between an 8.5 and a 9, just because if it doesn't end as well as I hope, then it's still a solid 9. But if it blows me away at the end, then I might just say it's the best made out of the 3 in the main series, in the Chronicles series. Even though, I can't claim a favorite even after that point, because I love the games for different reasons. I love 1 because of the emotional connection I have with it and how incredible the story was from start to finish, especially some of the individual characters and very powerful moments there. I love 2 so much because of how magical the world felt. The Titans were all just so cool and unique. The world was constantly moving because you're on top of these gigantic monsters, and they showed the fins moving in the background of the Titans as they were supposedly wandering around the seas and stuff. And I love the cast in 2 so much. I don't know if they can make a character that I love more than Pyra and Mithra. I'm sorry. I love their character so much. And I'm not even saying that as a, from a weeb standpoint for, how they're depicted. I love their characters so much. So in that regard, this game gets a solid recommendation from me. It's probably going to be one of my favorites as long as the story just doesn't blow it, which I don't think it will.
And I'm there with you. I say as long as the story delivers, I'm well, is it really gonna, drop the ball when it gets to that point? I really don't think so. But tempering my expectations a little bit, just in case. But if that finale does just blow me away, then this could easily be my favorite in the series. I've already mentioned how amazing the combat is, how I like the music, so many other aspects to it. It's got to beat the past 2 games. Phenomenal story.
I just don't know if I can play through this game 4 times like I did Xenoblade 2.
Oh no.
Yeah, gosh. I played through 2 so much.
That's
I blasted
incredible.
through the story plus some like side content. I played through another playthrough on hard mode just really quick. I then completed a significant chunk of a brand new playthrough, and then I 100%ed a new game plus. So
oh my word.
I love 2 so much.
Dang.
Yeah, that was kind of all I did for a while after it came out. I was after you had moved away, and I was kind of on my own in college for graduate school. But yeah, anyway, it's all good. That's just what I did, is I played so much Xenoblade.
Right. Yeah.
That's why it's hard for me to say if 3 will be like my favorite, because I just have such a connection to 2.
In the time it took you to beat it 4 times, I beat it once.
I don't know if that's true, but whatever.
No, it's not true. I played something else in between that.
I also watched a good chunk of Chugga Conroy's Xenoblade series in the background. So maybe I kind of played through 4.5 times, I guess. Oh. Or at least the story.
Gotcha.
Anyway. So that's kind of our review and impressions of the game without delving into spoiler territory. So hope that you've all kind of enjoyed some of our thoughts there. This is now your spoiler warning. We're probably going to talk up to, how far did you get? Like, are you in chapter 6?
I'm in chapter 6, but I have not really gotten far in the story there.
Okay, that's totally fine. So we will go up to chapter 6. I won't mention anything about how chapter 6 closes or anything about chapter 7.
Okay.
Again, this is your spoiler warning. If you have not played through this part of the game, we highly recommend that you bookmark this episode of the podcast and come listen to it afterwards, because the story is the most important thing about Xenoblade 3. So you really don't want to be spoiled if you're playing through the game. Right. Thank you again for listening. I guess we'll say goodbye to you here if this is the point where you're leaving us. And thanks for listening to the episode. But as it stands now, here we go. It is spoiler time. James.
I can't believe Juju was the bad guy all along.
Juju, no. He's still alive.
Man, those eternal beings.
Stupid Mobius.
All along. No. Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Sorry, but just to clarify, Juju was a really obnoxious character in Xenoblade 1, if you didn't know. Anyway, go ahead.
No, holy crap. Chapter 5 just really changes the game in a lot of ways.
I told you it.
I mean, it leaves you kind of emotionally drained just with how they build up Mio's death, and then the weird walking through the clouds, and that's how you get kind of Noah's how you get N's backstory, really.
Yeah.
And then the reveal that Mio and M switched places. It's like, oh my god!
I didn't see that coming.
No, I didn't either.
I was like, are you kidding me? But it makes sense.
Oh,
like, it made perfect sense.
It makes so much sense. And
that's why they showed us her power.
Yes, that's why she was crying. You know, it was like, why,
and that's why she said Noah and like called him by name. And it was like, oh
gosh, it was so good, so good. And the whole time that you're getting Mio in the dungeon, like thanking the team and just having that moment. It wasn't really Mio. It was M who was saying that. And it was just all these emotions
Which means that Mio was learning about Mobius for an entire month.
True that.
By the way.
Wow. Whew. Yeah, so much great emotions. And you mentioned Noah's performance earlier in English. He really did a fantastic job there.
Yeah.
Despite my, thinking like, yeah, he's like okay. Definitely a step up from Rex. But this one, he really... he matched Adam Howden's portrayal in Xenoblade 1 with Shulk.
Yes.
Like that is one of my favorite voice acting performances, and I think Noah came really close to matching that in chapter 5. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, Noah always had main character vibes to me, of course, because he's the protagonist,
Right.
And
yeah.
I would say that Mio is actually like the secondary protagonist, but the story starts with Noah and basically follows him all the way through and whatnot. But that is where he really felt like the protagonist, was when he finally when he broke down. I felt his emotion and his pain when he was like so happy that Mio was still alive. Like I felt that, and it was incredible. Like chapter 5, and the beginning of 6 just absolutely changed me. And I got to that point and it was 11 p.m. and I was just like, yeah, I think I'm going to continue the story from here. That'll be all right. And then 4 hours later, oh shoot, it's 2:30 in the morning. What have I done? I could not stop.
I think I had the same experience because I was streaming that section, and I don't remember exactly when I started really getting to the meat of chapter 6. But by the time I was done, and not chapter 6, chapter 5, but by the time I was done and had finished that whole part, and then Shania Twain kills herself and all that. Her name's not Shania Twain. I just call her that because that's the only Shania I know. Anyway, she from that point on, or excuse me, when it got to that point, it was 2:30 in the morning. It's like, oh my gosh! But I was so invested that it didn't matter. So yeah, it's an incredible cinematic moment, and it's capped off with his kind of revelation of having the sword of origin, or whatever they
his
call that
Monado
sword.
moment.
Yeah, exactly. His Monado, because not only does it kind of have a Monado look, I mean, it's like a skinny rapier version, really.
Yeah, that's made of metal, which is sick. Well,
sick.
except for their fusion form version of it, but yeah.
True. It has the Monado arts.
Yeah.
That we saw from the first game. Oh my gosh.
I mean,
they're different characters, but still it's the same kind of vibe. It's like, oh man, what are they building up here?
Yeah, so is this another one of the what's it called? The gigantic cross thing.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember what it's called.
I know what it's called, but it's not coming to my head. Why is it not coming to my head?
The conduit.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. Is this another piece of the conduit that's forming itself? Or is it the power of an Aegis or whatever?
I don't know, man.
I don't know either. And I'm so excited to see how the story wraps up.
Right. Would they dare bring back oh man, why can't I, the bad guy from 1?
Yeah, Zanza?
Zanza, would they dare bring back Zanza this story? I mean, he seems to.
Well, I was like,
Z.
He
created the universe.
Considering that
Z.
all of the Mobius have had
No, you're right. You're right. But
that was my thought. I don't think it's true, but I was just like, there's no way it's Zanza for Z. I mean,
would they do it again? I just don't think Takahashi would repeat himself like that.
Right,
you know what I mean?
One of my theories going into it was one of the things that we see in 1 and 2 are the parallels of Zanza and his original human form. Zanza's evil in 1, but he's a good guy in 2 and kind of holding the world together. What we didn't see in 2 was Maneth's human form or incarnation, because we know Maneth was also split. So part of me is is Z evil Maneth in some way?
Whoa. Oh man. Oh, that's a good theory. I like that theory. Ooh.
Because we know that Alvis was an Aegis, like Malos and Mithra, and he went to 1, but we had the 2 in 2, but we did not see Maneth. So that's my thought. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we saw Zanza and his human form were both male, so it's kind of weird if Z is evil Maneth.
Yeah.
But it could be Maneth's reincarnation of some kind. I don't know. Or it's a completely new villain. And I'd be fine if it's a new villain too.
I would be as well.
I also want to see how it connects to that original lore of 1 and 2, which it doesn't necessarily need to, I guess. But anyway.
Something else I really love about what they're doing with 3, and this is something we kind of knew going into it, is that they've fused the 2 worlds.
Yes.
2 kind of hinted at this, and Future Connected did as well. The fusion of the worlds. The land masses, but I just love exploring Aeonias and just seeing, Uriah, or seeing, the fallen hand or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, seeing the arm, hand, and maybe even face of More Ordained in the background. You don't go on it, I don't think.
Yeah, and you see the Orion Titan in the background too and stuff.
Right.
So
it's so cool just to be able to pinpoint that.
And even the art of the map, when you go into the menu screen, like when you're selecting an area to travel to, like you can see individual Titans and stuff. Yes, and it's so cool.
Yeah, I think it's just phenomenal job, and kind of it's like fan service, but it's not fan service in the sense they're just doing this with fans. It's like, it goes back to what Takahashi mentioned when the game first was revealed, like how he had planned on doing this story ever since they finished 1 and they knew it was going to be a series. So basically, like, they did 2 because they needed to set things up for this
or
game.
3. Yeah.
And not to say like they didn't like 2, but I don't know if you remember this, back when 2 was first released, he mentioned that I wanted to make a simple story about a boy and a girl, a boy meets girl type of story. And I remember being like, simple? This is anything but simple. But then you compare it to what's going on with 3 and the intricacies of war and the things that are dev. And I was like, okay, I see what he means by simple in that comparison. Not to say I'm like scoffing at the story or what 2 was, but 3 does kind of step it up a notch in its tone. It's the themes that it covers.
And even then, it is still somewhat a boy meets girl story too.
Actually, good point.
Like in some ways, it's not the same as 2's boy meets girl.
No.
It has some of those elements as well. And I think it does an incredible job too. Though I still really like Rex and Pyra/Mithra. Their story is just so good. But
and Nia. Anyway, sorry. This is not a Xenoblade 2 spoiler cast. This is 3.
Sorry.
But yes, I'm trying to think if there's anything else story-wise that I want to mention.
You go ahead.
You go first.
Okay. I have to say that the foreshadowing that they did with Uni seeing her husk at that destroyed battlefield blew me apart.
Ooh.
I was like, that is what's happening to this world. Like it opened everything. I'm like, they are literally recycling these lives. How many cycles have they lived through? Because I was just like, it's obviously Uni. She remembered those memories. And I was like, okay, it's obvious here that the reason why they only live for 10 years is that Mobius has done something to make it so that they are recycling their lives. And it blew my mind. That was when like the story really opened up to me, when I was like, okay, I need to kind of get through more of this because I need to know what happens, is when Uni saw her husk. And it was incredible.
And not just the story implications, but how she reacts to it. She is visibly shaken. And it kind of continues on throughout the whole thing. And then she has a moment against one of the consuls or the Mobius guys, and that's a really great moment for her. But and that's what makes this cast so great. Yeah. For the most part, I don't know. I'm still kind of iffy on Senna in some cases. I think she has a couple moments, but it's not as strong as say Uni, where she kind of just has this resolve to get over it, I guess.
I'm not going to spoil it, but you're going to probably like how Senna grows during her Ascension quest.
Okay. That's nice. But
good. That doesn't happen until chapter 7 or maybe no, I think you can actually unlock it in chapter 6.
I've unlocked Uni and Taion.
Uni and Taion are straightforward. I will say this isn't really spoilers, but you don't have to go searching for Mia and oh my gosh, Noah's. Those are both like you encounter them as you progress the story. Okay, easy. Like they're basically mandatory Ascension quests.
Okay, good.
And they're good. Like they're actually really quite good. I liked Mio's better than Noah's, but Noah's was also awesome. But Senna's Ascension quest. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be Senna's Ascension quest when you hear the rumor about it.
Yeah, Taion was kind of like that too. It was really random.
Do you want me to tell you like which conversation it seems to be about so that you can know to look for it?
I think for now I'm okay. I was worried about Taion because I heard someone who is around the same place I was and they had gotten it. I was like, oh crap, where did it go? It's like, oh, just keep listening around that area. I was like, okay. If I'm at a point where I feel like I should have gotten it already, I'll reach out to be like, hey, can you give me like a hint in the general direction where it is? Right. But for now, I'm good.
Okay. because Senna, not only is hers actually pretty good in a lot of ways, but also her class is one of the best classes in the game. And I really wanted to rank her up pretty quick after rank 10, because I was like, I need to deal tons of damage now. But anyway, so I do agree with you though. Senna, I love her dearly, but Uni and Mio's characters just seem a little bit deeper.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
I agree with that. And they just have more emotional moments, like that scene where Uni and Mio were talking under the tree, and Mio was talking about her past, that special person to her. Oh gosh, that was so good. And then Mio and Noah's moment. I believe this is chapter 4, where they kind of have an argument and then they talk it out afterwards. That was probably one of the first times where I got super emotional.
And it was crazy because so not a lot of JRPG stories will do that, where they'll have like the love interests kind of fight and then talk about the fight and kind of make up, you know? Sometimes it just seems like it's smooth sailing until they, they're an actual ship or something.
Yeah.
It just,
fair point.
That moment felt very real, That's why I bring that up. I don't know. There are just so many really good story beats. I'm really excited to see how this ends. I gotta say though, not spoiling any of the content, but you're going to love the transition between 6 and 7.
Sweet.
Me knowing you, yeah.
Great. I can't wait.
It's incredible. It's not as mind blowing as 5 to 6. That whole revelation and moment was just insane. That changed everything. But 6 to 7 is also very great. So
awesome.
I'm really hoping to see how this ends, especially as I have unlocked little extra bits of the story and seen other cutscenes. Because, they tend to do this in Xenoblade where they'll cut to the villains sometimes just randomly and kind of show you what's going on with them. And I'm just like, okay, I need to know more about this part of the story. They did that all the time for Xenoblade 2, where it's Jin and Malos talking, but there's no cutscene with Rex and his party. So they continue to do that, which, funnily enough, they didn't really do that in Xenoblade 1 very much at all, except they did building up to the Mechonis itself, but then there wasn't much about Zanza, right?
Right, yeah. After they got rid of the true villain was revealed or whatever, there wasn't much Zanza by himself kind of stuff. But
yeah,
you had the people from the Mechonis having their different talks and
right. But anyway, it seems like 3 is also very interested in showing us the actual feelings and thoughts of the villains, which is cool. I really appreciate stuff like that, because I am an audience member first and foremost. Even though I am playing as the main character, I really like to know how the world is evolving beyond just what the main characters are experiencing.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are some of the really great reveals. As it stands, the reveals of the story honestly feel more game changing to me than any of the story beats in 2.
Oh, in 2? Yeah.
In 2. In 1, there were some incredible ones where I was blown away.
One really had. I mean, 3 is up there right now.
Yes.
But will it match 1's phenomenal ending? I'm not sure. 2 had a great ending as well, obviously.
Yes.
But you're right. There weren't as many just, wow, this changes the way I look at everything, really. There were a couple of times that, you get emotional. And I think it was just so much that you're just in the moment of some of these really epic battles, Pyra gets taken, or, Vandam. Okay, this is not a Xenoblade 2 spoiler cast. I keep telling myself this. But anyway.
But I feel 3 though, I hope that we aren't spoiling anything for people that haven't played 2 that are listening to our 3 spoiler cast here.
Right, you're right.
But I imagine that the people that have already finished 3 understand the story from 2 and have played it. So I don't know. I don't feel as bad. I'll put a warning in the description that we do talk about 2 and 1.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want to.
Well, at least for this chunk, because this is kind of a open book section. But anyway,
it's true. Speaking of kind of spoilers for those previous 2 games, the reveal of Melia being a puppet, a little robot thing, was really cool.
Oh yeah.
And then it was also like kind of a relief. It's like, of course she wouldn't be allowing this. There's something going on here.
I was like, if it had been revealed that it actually was Melia, I would have probably stopped playing the game, because Melia is my favorite character from 1. And I was so mad when I saw that she was queen of this awful country.
Right?
And I was just like, there's no way. What? Everything I know about this character is wrong. Like,
yeah.
I love Melia so much. Yeah, and Nia.
Yeah. So it did do my heart good to see that reveal, and I thought it was a very satisfying one as well.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where they're going with this whole Queen's Asleep thing. That seems to be my next objective in the game, so we'll see where that goes. But I'm super hyped to see where that is. My theory with all of this, or from the very beginning, was that something happened between the two worlds where Melia and Nia got cut up in all of it. Long after the main party had died, they kept living. But it makes me wonder, where exactly are the blades? And,
that's my problem. Where are Pyra and Mithra?
Exactly.
Where is Bridget?
Well, I guess, with Pyra and Mithra, based on what happened at the end of 2, I guess you could say maybe that made them real human beings. I'm not sure. It's not clear.
Maybe it did, because it separated them from their actual core crystals or whatever.
Right.
And I guess Bridget was never a blood eater, and they probably never wanted her to be one.
When the blade user dies, they die too, and then they get reincarnated. So
unless they're a blade eater or a blood eater, whatever they're called.
Right. Blood, whichever one it was.
Heart, flesh eater, I don't remember.
Flesh eater, maybe. Anyway, the Bridget should technically still be around in core. I guess what happened to the blades in general? Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, at least the pure blades or something, because it's kind of weird. Some of the Agnes characters are very clearly blades.
Yeah.
But they are humans and they die, and I'm just like, weird.
So another theory I had going into the game was, are these guys all clones? Because of course they are species of, previous species in the game. They come from the descendants of that, but they also share features of some of the blades, for example, at least the Agnes sides. And it's like, is there some sort of, they took DNA from these blades and they put it into one, and maybe something happened with Kevas in the same light. I don't know. So I'm kind of doubtful of that theory a little bit now, but that was what I had going into the game. So I'm like, okay.
Well, and then you also have the city. The city is also kind of weird, but they're all humans there.
Right. There's no Hyentia. That's what's really confused me. It's like, why are there no winged people? Where are the bird ladies?
I know.
I need more bird ladies.
Or even the Gormati.
Where are the cat ladies?
The cat ladies.
Come on now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how they wrap a lot of this stuff up. I think a lot of questions will be answered as we continue.
Last thing though.
Okay.
The founders, what? I guess we know that Mio and Noah are supposed to be one of those two, but what about the other ones? If you read the descriptions, two of the statues are mentors instead of who they really are, and it's one of them kind of looks like Shulk, kind of it's the outfit he's wearing is Shulk-like, but I couldn't find one that looked like Rex unless Rex got really meaty. I don't know. Maybe he did.
I mean, I don't know. Part of me has always been is the Van Damme family actually descended from Rex? How else did they get that name?
I don't know.
There was only one Van Damme in 2.
It's true. You're right.
And Rex basically looked up to him like a father for a chunk.
True.
So I don't know. The hair color is the same.
Also, where did the dark skin come from? I guess maybe Van Damme's. Well, here's the thing: the statue that looks like Noah, and I think it's supposed to be Noah, was the House of Van Damme. It says so.
I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, sorry. There's so much to theorize, but I'll end it there. I will control myself.
I'm excited to finish the game just so that I can be okay, now I can start drawing all the connections between the games, because
right, that's a good point. Yeah.
1 and 2, it was like, okay, there isn't a lot here that makes this a sequel to 1 until you get to the end of the game.
Until
and you're just like,
yeah.
Oh, that was, okay. This is actually a parallel story, isn't it?
Yeah.
But 3 is definitely a sequel.
Yeah. For sure. We're in the spoiler content, but I will say that those who have never played 1 or 2, I think they can go into this game and enjoy it. But even more so than 2, I think there's something to be gained from having played the previous 2 games and going into this one.
Yeah, when 2 came out, I could easily recommend it to anyone that's never played 1. That was straightforward. Like, pick up 2. You won't know the difference. Like, you won't make the connection because there really isn't much of 1. And then you play through 1 and it's like its own story. Mm-hmm. And then you can watch the final cutscenes in 2 again and be like, that's what happened.
Yeah.
But when it comes to 3, like, I think 3 has a self-contained story that's really good and fun to follow.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But freaking Nia and Melia are very clearly characters from the first 2 games.
Yeah.
And a lot of what is happening is very clearly based on stuff that's discussed in 1 and 2. So, like, anyway, you definitely get a lot more out of it, understanding, or at least having played through or watched a playthrough of somebody playing through 1 and 2. I know they're massive games, absolutely massive, and take a long time. I think they're worth every minute that you spend in them because they're just incredible stories. But I understand that we live in an age where too many things are fighting for our attention.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. I don't know if there are any other spoilers I kind of want to bring up. We just kind of had fun talking there about things, huh?
I could ramble, but at this point, I'm like, there's some things that I just don't know yet that I probably talk about and just sound stupid to people who have beat the game, like snicker, like, he has no idea that they're actually aliens or
or whatever the twist was in X. I don't want to spoil that one. I don't know if you know the twist in that one.
Actually, don't. So
okay, I won't say anything.
Okay.
But anyway, it's so bizarre, and I'm sure there are people listening to this that are like, hey, they haven't even beat the game, but I probably will have beaten it by the time I publish the episode anyway. So I can be like, I guess I was wrong on literally everything that I was thinking. We'll see. But anyway, James, is there anything else you wanted to bring up about Xenoblade? We've been talking about it for a very long time, and it's been an absolute blast.
It has been a blast. No, I've already said like my rankings, my thoughts, and everything. So I'm feeling pretty good, and I can't wait to eventually finish the game.
Awesome. I'm in the same boat, looking forward to finishing it. It's a Xenoblade game, and you should definitely pick it up if you're at all interested. It'll be worth it, I think, for those of you that are still listening. Anyway, to kind of wrap things up, James, why don't you remind our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, Nintendo City, my YouTube page. I talk about Fire Emblem, Xenoblade, Zelda, and do fun video essays there. Please look forward to that. Subscribe. And then I also do a podcast with my good friend Petter called Umami Manga, and we talk about mostly manga. We actually just posted a anime related video. It's our first ever video content on Umami Manga. I edited the video, so you can take a look at that. Basically giving our recommendations on some of our favorite anime. But so check us out at Umami Manga. So Nintendo City, Umami Manga, all your weeby nerd culture needs. I mean, at least those 2 genres.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And again, those links to those pages will be in the description. So be sure to give them a look. Now to kind of wrap up the NintenFusion side of things. So that was Nintendo City. And now for the NintenFusion podcast, thanks again for listening to this really long, awesome episode about Xenoblade. We've had a lot of fun talking about it, and really appreciate those of you that have listened and appreciate the series as much as we do. If you are interested in chatting with me and Jordan, and maybe even James if he hops on the Discord server, about Xenoblade and other Nintendo games, come check out our Discord server. You can visit that by either clicking the link in the description or visiting nintenfusion.com/discord. Of course, we're available on YouTube and all other podcasting apps, and it'd really mean a lot if you guys left us a review or a like or a comment, anything to feed the hungry algorithms that help the show grow by getting it out to other people. Thanks again so much for listening to this episode of the NintenFusion Podcast. Jordan will be back on the next one, and we'll catch you on the next one. Again, thanks, James, for joining us, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks.
See you later. Thanks for having me.